hold it there and it's not going to autofocus. So it's just with screws here, and this is just the old school clip system. That is so weird. Why is AMD doing that? Now I am trying to do everything in one shot because Project 1 behind me is still rendering all the other AM4 videos, and I'm just trying to do it all as quickly as I possibly can, which is why it may look like I rushed this one and didn't prepare, because I'll tell you a secret, I have not prepared for these videos. I hardly know the specs on these boards and chips. Also, I'm just trying to fill some time while I unscrew these things. Why on earth do I have to do this? Why doesn't the stock cooler just clip in? That's the weirdest thing ever. And also I'm still a bit upset that the text is on sideways. Anyway, so it's very 2011 like. I'll boost the exposure just a little bit. So as you guys can see, there's actually threaded screws coming out of the back. It is attached there with the back plate. Actually the back plate can just fall out like that. Okay, now I have to get the back plate back on there. That's really weird. I have no idea why AMD does it like that. So it's more bad news. You see, this is a rectangle. So if I put this cooler on here, the AMD branding is going to be over here instead of like this, you know, the way it should be looking like this. It's actually going to be over here. So far, first impressions with Ryzen are incredibly negative. Everything's at an angle, although you could just do that. Maybe we should all go back to
There's a ton of new things to discuss when it comes to Ryzen and those strange gaming benchmarks from the past couple days, so stay tuned. So AMD hosted an AMA on Reddit yesterday in celebration of their new chips. The CEO, head of technical marketing, as well as the head of business development were there to answer questions. As you can guess, they discussed Ryzen gaming performance a good bit. I've actually discussed the performance issues in certain video games with Ryzen CPUs in a past video, but AMD and actually other companies have shed some light on this. Some may argue they have to say this because of AMD's stock since the benchmarks came out, but I do believe most of what they're saying, as it definitely makes sense having come back in the game with Intel being in the lead for nearly a decade now. So yeah, let's start things off with an answer to the Reddit AMA question on the discrepancy in gaming benchmarks. Lisa Sue answers, and I quote, "Ryzen is doing really well in 1440p and 4K gaming when the applications are more graphics bound. And we do exceptionally well in rendering and workstation applications when more cores are really useful. In 1080p, we have tested over 100 plus titles in the labs, and depending on the test conditions, we do better in some games and worse in others. We hear people on wanting to see improved 1080p performance, and we fully expect the Ryzen performance in 1080p will only get better as developers get more time with Zen. We have over 300 plus developers now working with Zen, and several of the developers for Ashes of Singularity and Total Warhammer are actively optimizing now." The head of technical marketing chimes in to also state, "In addition to Lisa's comments, there are also some variables that could affect performance. Early motherboard BIOSes were certainly troubled. Disabling unrelated features would turn off cores. Setting memory overclocks on some motherboards would disable boost. Some BIOS revisions would plain produce universally suppressed performance. The second one, Ryzen benefits from disabling high precision event timers, or HPET. The timer resolution of HPET can cause an observer effect that can subtract performance. This is a BIOS option, or a function that can be disabled with the Windows command shell. And then number 3, Ryzen benefits from enabling the high performance power profile. This overrides core parking. Eventually we will have a driver that allows people to stay unbalanced and disable core parking anyways. Gamers have been doing this for a while too. These are just some examples of the early growing pains that can be overcome with time." So it certainly seems they're focused pretty hard on optimizing games to work well on Ryzen. And what Robert Halleck, the technical marketing head, said is something we definitely want to consider. This is an entirely new architecture for AMD and really everyone. It could be argued they released prematurely, but a launch so big certainly can't account for all possible issues. So for gamers who bought AMD's newest chips, make sure you keep your BIOS updated. The next question I really want to cover is I think the answer is the ultimate reason we're seeing such discrepancies between games, and the answer given is certainly telling. The question is essentially wondering why they discuss 1440p and 4K when most of the work is done through the GPU, so it's essentially pointless to compare CPUs at that point. This is definitely true, and I also get the answer given. They're trying to say people who own 4K and 1440p monitors still want to know how it performs, but this side of the answer isn't what I want to focus on. It's what is said after that's extremely telling. So here's what Sue, the CEO, says that's key to all of this. We're also not shying away from the 1080p results. We clearly have some work to do with game developers on some of these titles to invest in the vital optimizations that can so dramatically improve an application's performance on a new microarchitecture. This takes time, but we'll get it done. But what's also clear is that there's a distribution of games that run well, and a distribution of games that run poorly. Call it a bell curve if you will. It's unfortunate that the outliers are some notable titles, but many of these game devs, e.g. Oxide, Sega, Bethesda, have already said there's significant improvement that can be gleaned. We have proven the Zen performance in IPC. Many reviewers today prove that at 1080p in games. There is no architectural reason why the remaining titles should be performing as they are. So, the key really does seem to be optimization, and it's true. I think consoles have shown how optimization is incredibly important. Sure, they don't run nearly as good as a PC with twice the power, but developers can really squeeze those numbers out when working closer to the metal. Honestly, the simple fact is that AMD has been out of the race for so long, developers have barely looked to them for the development of their code. But the fact that AMD is actively going to them to get them aboard, honestly I think says a ton. It was even said they're on track for 1,000 plus developer systems. Lastly, let's look at what some of these companies are saying. Oxide Games says, once again quoting here, Oxide Games is incredibly excited with what we are seeing from the Ryzen CPU. Using our Nitrous game engine, we are working to scale our existing and future game title performance to take full advantage of Ryzen and its 8-core, 16-thread architecture, and the results thus far are impressive. These optimizations are not yet available for Ryzen benchmarks, however, expect updates soon to enhance the performance of games like Ashes of Singularity on Ryzen CPUs, as well as our future game releases. So I have to say, it's incredible that they're actually able to get all 8 cores and 16 threads working with their engine, and it certainly sounds like they're getting some incredible performance from doing so. That isn't all either. Creative Assembly also made a statement very similar to Oxide Games, and it's just looking pretty good. So yeah, in conclusion, it certainly seems optimization is truly the name of the game. If Ryzen is able to sell well enough, developers will be forced to optimize for the new architecture, and with AMD actively working with them, it seems the future is looking bright for Ryzen. But what do you guys think? Is Intel going to hit back even harder? Are you excited for the future of gaming? Let me know in the comments below, and definitely don't forget to subscribe for future content. And as always, have a great day.
Here we go again. The beacons are powering up.
In the name of Cenarius.
Fort destruction complete.
Make haste toward the beacons. They're up and running.
I'm ready to continue the hunt.
As nature
ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to Tech Showdown. My name is Kevin, this is my co-host Teddy, and today I bring you the 1700X. So we did the 1800X, these are both Ryzen 7 CPUs. I wanted to check out the 1700X as well, and I will be doing a showdown in a few days' time with the 1700X going up against another Broadwell E CPU. But today I just wanted to talk about something I've seen loads of comments about and people telling me to do, and that is to test a Ryzen 7 CPU with SMT disabled. So let's talk about that briefly. So what is SMT? So it stands for a simultaneous multi-threading, and it's pretty much like Intel's hyper-threading. It means that there's basically 2 threads per core, so that's why when it comes to these CPUs they say they're 8 cores, 16 threads. If you disable SMT, it will just mean they're 8 cores, 8 threads. And that's basically all it is. Now, I'll quote from WCCF Tech. They say, testing data suggests that AMD's Ryzen 7 8-core parts actually perform better in a number of games with simultaneous multi-threading disabled, a finding that's reminiscent of past Windows scheduling issues that may need a patch to be resolved. So that's very interesting there. Obviously, once that patch comes, it'll be very good and it will pretty much make this video irrelevant. But as of right now, this is a good point to raise. So let's talk briefly about overclocking. Now, if you watch my other video, which I suggest you do, you'll realize that you'll remember, I should say, that my 1800X went up to 4 gigahertz and I couldn't get it to go higher. And that was the same case with the 1700X, and that falls perfectly into what AMD said that most people get between 3.9 and 4.1 gigahertz on all 8 cores with their Ryzen 7 CPU, so that makes sense. There's a lot of people out there spreading a whole bunch of false information about these crazy overclocks they get, but honestly, I've checked this with Steve from Hardware Unboxed and Brian. We've been chatting heaps, comparing all our data, and it seems pretty consistent, and I've looked at a whole bunch of other tech YouTubers out there, and they're all getting sort of similar type things, including Wendell the Great as well, and other people. So yeah, this just seems like these guys like to sit at about 4 gigahertz on average on all 8 cores. Now let's talk about the specs of the test rig, and then we'll get into some benchmarking. So, motherboard-wise, I'm using this guy right here. So, it's the Aorus Gaming 5 X370. Very, very solid motherboard. I'm really liking it. Steve from Hardware Unboxed also quite likes it too. And yeah, this one is quite decent. I don't really have any issues with it. And before you guys ask, because I know a lot of you talking about it, it was fully updated. Made sure I did all of that. But yeah, I seem to get pretty good results coming out of this guy. A lot of other people out there have had quite a few nightmares when it comes to some of their X370 motherboards. So without further ado, let's jump into the benchmarking and see what the 1700X does with SMT enabled and SMT disabled. I'll be showing more of these benchmarks when I do my next showdown. But let's just get into the handful I'm going to show today. So first we do Cinebench. This is obviously to do with productivity. And you see that with SMT disabled, there's a big drop down there. Obviously it can't utilize as much. So that makes sense, exactly what you'd see. But the gains are where it differs. So in Shadow of Mordor, we see a small bump up there at 1080p, and then it's pretty much identical through the other resolutions with SMT disabled. Not really much to see there, pretty much what, they're more or less the same. However, when we go into Dirt Rally, that changes big time. Look at the difference there. With SMT disabled, it gets 127 frames a second at 1080p compared to 106 before. That is a huge jump up there. At 1440p, we also see a bit of a bump up, and at 4K, it's pretty much the same within the margin of error. So, yeah, that's a huge change in Dirt Rally. And moving over to the last one I'll do in this video, Deus Ex. Mankind Divided, you see a 2 FPS jump up at 1080p, and then it's pretty much the same along the 1440p and 4K benchmark, and I'm pretty sure that GPU bottlenecking the GTX 1080 is just such a beast of benchmark to run. So very interesting there. What does that tell us? Well, it proves what a lot of people are saying, that it's only in some games will you see any sort of benefit. But honestly, I don't think this is like a real world thing. No one's going to be like, oh, I'm doing my productivity stuff. I got to go, you know, restart the computer and turn SMT on, and then, oh, okay, I'm going to go do some gaming. I better restart the computer and turn it back off again. No one's actually going to be doing that, but it's interesting to note, and it's quite interesting to see that there is some work still to be done. Hopefully that patch does go through at some point and fixes this issue so that those results are consistent with SMT on and SMT off. You'll get the same result regardless, which is probably what we will see in the future. Now, one last thing I wanted to mention is there seems to be a lot of misinformation going around the community right now in regards to these Ryzen CPUs and how people are benchmarking them. Now, I've seen some tech reviewers, you probably know who I'm talking about, doing all the benchmarks at 4K. You know, why would you do that? That of course is going to make them look the same, but you could have a little probably i3 in there and it would look the same as what these guys are doing, because it's a full-on GPU bottleneck. Steve made a great video about this. I'll leave it in the description down below to check it out, and he covers all of this in much more detail. Then I'm seeing some other tech reviewers doing it at 720p, which you think, great, yeah, that'll really show the CPU differences. Yet the differences between their Intel counterparts are very, very small, and everyone's going, hey, well, why are these results so different to everybody else's? Myself, Brian, and Steve have tried to replicate some of these, and we just can't do it. So I don't know what's going on. There is so much misinformation and craziness going on right now, and it seems like there's nothing. A lot of people are fudging a lot of the results. Now, I know mine are consistent because I have compared them with Steve's and Brian's. We've been doing this Skype group conversation, and we've just been sharing all our results and comparing them to each other, and all of ours are the same. So on all three of our channels, I can 100% say that our results are fair, honest, and accurate. But plenty of these other tech reviewers should really feel ashamed of themselves because they're really misrepresenting things, and they are putting out basically fake news, fake results, and it's not helpful to anyone. It's giving people the wrong idea. And that's not to say I'm picking on Ryzen, because I was very fair, and I do recommend it to a lot of people out there, and I'm very fair to both Intel and AMD. But let's be honest, guys. You've got to take these results, these weird results that some people get that are way different to every other tech review. You have to disregard them, because obviously they're doing something wrong. Maybe they're fudging it or something like that, and stick to the vast amount of results. You know, there's like the video a while back of someone saying, I've got 999 results saying, you know, one thing, and one result saying the other thing, and the person goes, well, I just want that one result. It makes no sense. Go with what everybody else is saying. And that's how I'm going to end this video. So as always, subscribe to Tech Showdown if you haven't already, to catch my 1700X showdown against another Broadwell E CPU, which will be coming up very soon. And as always, I'll see you guys. Tech Showdown. My name is Kevin. This is my co-host Teddy, and today I'm going to be covering Ryzen. Here I have the Ryzen 7 1800X, and we're going to be doing a showdown against the Intel i7 6900K Broadwell E CPU. So it's going to be x86 versus x99. Now I'm not going to go over all the features between these two CPUs. Most of you guys probably know them all anyway, so there's not really much point. I'll basically just say they are both 8-core CPUs, both 16 thread. And clock speed wise, I've set them both to 4 GHz on all of their 8 cores, just to keep it nice and easy in that regard. So I'll talk a little bit now about the overclocking, and then we'll go into the benchmark. So overclocking the 1800X was a very interesting affair. I was talking to Steve from Hardware Unboxed and Brian from Tech City a lot lately, and because we've all been trying to overclock Ryzen CPUs, and it just seems very, very strange. So no matter what I did, it would not go above 4 GHz. It would just sit there. It would not go to 4.1. Now you might be saying to me, well, Kevin, it says on the box it goes to 4 GHz. That's true, but it will only do it on one core. The rest sat for me at 3.7 GHz. So it would only do it on that one, and through XFR it actually went up a bit higher than that. It was actually closer to 4.1 on that single core. But yeah, I thought that was quite interesting. Then when I went to go do some overclocking, I thought getting them all 8 on 4 GHz would be capable, but no, it was very, very difficult. I had a lot of trouble, and yeah, it's just a lot of people aren't really managing to get, as of right now, from everything I've heard from the other people in the industry, it seems like 4 GHz or 4.1 seems to be the go. You maybe if you get lucky, you get 4.1, but they do not go much higher than that. And with that being said, I had to set the memory to 2133 megahertz just to keep it at 4 GHz. So I even touched the memory a little bit. It just wasn't having it. So very interesting in the overclocking department. However, first let's talk about the specs of the rig. So the X370 rig was running the Aorus Gaming 5 motherboard. Very, very solid there. They're both running the exact same Corsair Dominator Platinum memory at 2133 MHz. The same GPU, the Gigabyte G1 Gaming GTX 1080. So it was nice and fair in that regard. I tried to match everything as best I could to give you guys the most fair showdown I possibly can. So I'll show you what the Broadwell E, this is actually my personal rig, this is the specs on it. So of course we got the 6900K, same memory, same GPU, all the rest of it. Both of these guys are running pretty decent motherboards as well, so it's not like they're running a bad motherboard. The MSI X99A is Gaming Pro Carbon is a very solid motherboard, and the same with that Aorus Gaming 5, although I would think there's still improvements to be made there on that Gigabyte board, which can be handled later on through BIOS updates. But with